My name is Dr. Ilara Morgan, a 28-year-old quantum physicist with nothing but a cramped basement lab and impossible dreams. When my breakthrough finally came, my father smirked across our family dinner table. "Your little experiment is worthless," he said, sliding papers across for me to sign away my rights. He never believed his daughter could achieve what powerful men couldn't. What he didn't know was that, at that very moment, my phone was buzzing with an email that would change everything. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from, and hit that subscribe button if anyone has ever underestimated your potential. Trust me, what happened next is a story you won't want to miss. Let me paint you a picture of the Morgan family. From the outside, we looked perfect. My father, Richard Morgan, built skyscrapers across 3 states. Construction mogul. Self-made millionaire. The kind of man who wore expensive suits and spoke in dollar signs. My mother, Margaret? She used to be sharp as a blade. Top accountant at her firm before she married Dad. But somewhere along the way, she traded her calculator for cocktail parties. Became the perfect CEO wife who smiled pretty and kept quiet. Then there was Daniel. My older brother. Dad's pride and joy. The heir apparent who learned to talk profit margins before he could drive. Everything he touched turned to gold in my father's eyes. And then there was me. Ilara. The mistake. The daughter who stared at stars instead of spreadsheets. 3 moments carved our family dynamic into stone, and I remember each one like it happened yesterday. I was 12 when I won first place at the regional science fair. While other kids made baking soda volcanoes, I demonstrated quantum superposition with mirrors and lasers. The judges were amazed. Local newspaper wanted to interview me. You know where my dad was? Closing a deal. Said business meetings mattered more than kid stuff. I stood on that stage holding my trophy, scanning the crowd for his face. Mom was there, clapping politely. But the empty chair next to her told me everything I needed to know about my place in this family. Fast forward to senior year. The letter came on a Tuesday. MIT. Full scholarship. For years of tuition, room, and board. I screamed so loud our neighbors probably thought someone was dying. Mom hugged me for exactly 30 seconds before Dad walked in. For years wasted on theories, he said, not even looking at the letter. Harvard Business has a legacy program. That's where Morgan children belong. Legacy program. Because our family legacy was supposed to be construction contracts and profit margins. Not discovering how the universe actually works. But the worst moment came 6 years later. Picture me at 24, defending my doctoral thesis in front of 50 professors. My research on quantum entanglement stabilization. 6 years of 18-hour days. Living on ramen noodles and determination. I nailed it. Summa cum laude. Dr. Ilara Morgan. My parents sat in the back row like they were attending a stranger's graduation. No tears. No cheers. Just polite applause that felt colder than winter rain. The professor next to me whispered, "Your parents must be so proud." I smiled and nodded. But inside, something broke that day. The last piece of hope I had that maybe, just maybe, they'd see me as more than their broken daughter. So I built my own world. A tiny lab in my apartment basement. Second-hand equipment I bought at auctions and estate sales. It smelled like burnt circuits and dreams, but it was mine. The only person who believed in me was Professor Julian Hayes from MIT. He'd call every few months, check on my research. He told me once, "Ilara, the greatest revolutions start in basements. Don't let anyone convince you your work is too small." Those words became my lifeline. While my family gathered every Sunday around our polished dining table, talking deals and acquisitions, I was down in my lab, chasing particles, testing theories, building something they couldn't imagine. Because here's what they never understood about quantum physics. It's not just science. It's magic disguised as math. The ability to connect particles across impossible distances. To make the invisible visible. To prove that two things can be linked forever, no matter how far apart they get. Maybe that's why I loved it so much. In a family where I felt completely disconnected, I was studying the deepest connections in the universe. Every Sunday dinner was the same routine. Dad and Daniel would discuss their latest projects. Mom would nod and refill wine glasses. And I'd sit at the far end of the table like a guest in my own family. "Still playing with your gadgets?" Dad would ask between bites. "Still chasing imaginary money?" Daniel would add with that smirk I wanted to slap off his face. I learned to laugh it off, smile and change the subject. But deep down, I was building something that would change everything. I just didn't know how soon that moment would come. It was 2:15 a.m. on a Tuesday when everything changed. My basement lab was freezing. The space heater had given up hours ago, and the single bulb overhead flickered like it was running on fumes. I'd been awake for 3 straight days, surviving on gas station coffee and sheer stubbornness. My quantum entanglement experiment sat on the workbench like a metal sculpture made of mirrors, wires, and impossible dreams. For 2 years, I'd been trying to stabilize quantum entanglement for more than a few milliseconds. Every scientist in the world was chasing the same goal. Stabilize it, and you unlock everything. Unbreakable encryption. Instant communication across any distance. Medical breakthroughs that could save millions of lives. And yes, billions in potential revenue. I was ready to quit. My eyes burned. My hands shook from too much caffeine and not enough food. Maybe Dad was right. Maybe I was just wasting my life on fantasies. But something told me to try one more calibration. I adjusted the laser alignment by 1/2 degree. Tweaked the quantum field generator. Held my breath and pressed the activation button. The machine hummed to life. My sensors started blinking in patterns I'd never seen before. The entangled particles locked together, holding their connection. 1 second. 2 seconds. 5 seconds. 8.4 seconds. I stared at the readout, convinced I was hallucinating. Quantum entanglement had never been stable for more than 3 seconds in any lab anywhere on Earth. I ran the test again. Same result. Again. Same result. I dropped into my chair and cried like a baby. This wasn't just a breakthrough. This was history. The kind of discovery that gets written about in textbooks 50 years later. The foundation for technology that would reshape civilization. My hands trembled as I documented everything. Photos of the equipment. Screenshots of the data. Video recordings of the stable entanglement lasting longer than anyone thought possible. At 4 a.m., I sent an encrypted file to Professor Hayes with a simple message: "Julian, I think I just changed the world." He replied in 12 minutes, "Alara, file for a patent immediately. This isn't just research anymore. This is your future." I didn't sleep. Instead, I spent the next 18 hours preparing patent applications. Every detail. Every measurement. Every technical specification that proved my method worked. By Thursday morning, the paperwork was filed. Patent application number 11,847,392. Inventor, Dr. Alara Morgan. Sole inventor. For the first time in my life, I owned something that no one could take away from me. But here's where I made my mistake. Some tiny part of me still hoped that maybe, just maybe, success could bridge the gap between my family and me. That if I achieved something big enough, important enough, they'd finally see me as more than their disappointing daughter. I decided to tell them at Sunday dinner. Not because I needed their approval anymore. I'd learned to live without that years ago. But because I wanted to share this moment with the people who were supposed to love me most. Saturday night, I rehearsed what I'd say. How I'd explain quantum entanglement in terms they could understand. How I'd describe the potential applications. The companies already interested in licensing the technology. I imagined Dad's face when he realized his impractical daughter had just solved one of the biggest challenges in modern physics. Daniel's shock when he learned about the billion-dollar potential. Mom's pride when she finally had something to brag about to her friends. Maybe I was naive. Maybe I should have known better. But 28 years of dismissal had left me hungry for their validation, even though I'd convinced myself I didn't need it. Sunday arrived gray and cold. I drove to their house in my beat-up Honda, patent confirmation documents in my backpack like a secret weapon. The house looked exactly the same as always. Perfect landscaping. Spotless driveway. The kind of suburban mansion that screamed success to everyone who drove by. I sat in my car for 10 minutes, gathering courage. This was it. The moment that would change our family forever. I just had no idea how much change was coming. Or that by the end of dinner, I'd discover exactly how little my family's love was worth when money got involved. Walking into my parents' house felt like entering a museum. Everything perfect. Everything polished. Crystal glasses catching light from the chandelier Mom imported from Italy. The dining room table could seat 12, but it always felt too big for our family of 4. The smell of roasted lamb filled the air. Mom's signature dish for special occasions, though I couldn't figure out what we were celebrating. Ilara. Mom's voice carried that forced cheerfulness she'd perfected over 20 years of corporate dinner parties. You look thin. Are you eating enough? Same question every Sunday. Like she was reading from a script. Dad sat at the head of the table in his usual spot, already carving meat with surgical precision. He wore khakis and a golf shirt, but somehow still looked like he was conducting a board meeting. Daniel lounged in his chair, scrolling through his phone. Hey, little sister. Still playing mad scientist? I forced a smile. Something like that. The first 30 minutes followed our normal pattern. Dad dominated conversation with stories about his latest construction project. Some medical complex downtown that would revolutionize healthcare infrastructure in our city. Daniel chimed in with his ideas for expanding the business into renewable energy. Solar panels on commercial buildings. Wind farms in rural counties. Everything came back to profit margins and market share. Mom played her role perfectly. Refilled wine glasses before they emptied. Asked follow-up questions that showed she was listening. Smiled at all the right moments. I sat at the far end of the table, picking at my food, waiting for the right moment to speak. Finally, during a pause in their business talk, I cleared my throat. I have some news to share. Dad didn't look up from cutting his lamb. Make it quick, Ilara. Some of us have early meetings tomorrow. My heart hammered against my ribs. I had a breakthrough this week. In my lab. Daniel glanced up from his phone for the first time all evening. What kind of breakthrough? I stabilized quantum entanglement. For over 8 seconds. It's never been done before. Silence stretched across the table like a fault line. Then Daniel laughed. Actually laughed. What does that mean in English? I took a deep breath. It means secure communication systems that can't be hacked. Quantum computers thousands of times more powerful than anything that exists today. Medical imaging technology that could detect cancer at the cellular level. Dad finally looked at me, fork halfway to his mouth. And we're talking about billions in potential revenue. Multiple companies are already interested in licensing the technology. More silence. But this time it felt different. Heavier. Mom reached for the wine bottle. That's wonderful, dear. Isn't that wonderful, Richard? But Dad wasn't smiling. He was thinking. I could see the gears turning behind his eyes, the same expression he wore when calculating construction bids. Billions, you said? His voice was casual, but I caught the edge underneath. Conservative estimates, yes. This could be the foundation for entire new industries. Daniel set down his phone completely. How do you know these estimates are accurate? Professor Hayes has connections at MIT's Technology Transfer Office. He's been consulting with venture capital firms and tech companies. The preliminary interest is significant. Dad leaned back in his chair, studying me like I was a blueprint he was trying to decode. That's quite a claim, Ilara. Billions from your basement experiment. Something in his tone made my stomach tighten. Not dismissal this time. Something else. Something that felt almost predatory. It's not an experiment anymore, Dad. It's a proven technology with documented results and verified applications. He nodded slowly. I'm sure it is. Then he reached beside his chair and pulled out a manila folder I hadn't noticed before. Funny you should bring this up tonight, he said, sliding the folder across the polished table toward me. Because I've been having some interesting conversations this week. My hands trembled as I opened the folder. Inside were legal documents. Incorporation papers. Technology transfer agreements. Partnership proposals. All with my name on them. All already prepared. All giving majority control to someone else. I looked up at Dad's face, and for the first time in my life, I saw him clearly. Not as my disappointed father, but as a businessman who'd just spotted an opportunity. And I was the product he planned to sell. My hands went numb as I flipped through the documents. Every page was like a slap in the face. Technology licensing agreements. Corporate partnership deals. Revenue sharing contracts. All bearing the letterhead of Morgan Family Enterprises. All dated 3 days ago. 3 days before I'd told them anything about my breakthrough. What is this? My voice came out as a whisper. Dad's expression didn't change. Cool. Professional. Like we were negotiating a construction contract instead of discussing my life's work. Business, Ilara. Something you've never understood. I found my voice. You knew. You knew about my research before tonight. Of course I knew. You think I don't keep tabs on my own daughter? Professor Hayes and I had lunch last Tuesday. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. Julian. My mentor. The one person I thought I could trust. Daniel leaned forward, suddenly very interested. What exactly are we looking at here, Dad? Your sister's little quantum project has commercial potential. So I've arranged some partnerships. Tech companies. Defense contractors. Investors with real money. I flipped to the ownership structure page and felt my world collapse. Morgan Family Enterprises, 70% Daniel Morgan, CEO, personal stake Ilara Morgan, chief scientist, 30%. 30%, I said, my voice hollow. You're giving me 30% of my own discovery. Dad's patience was wearing thin. You should be grateful. Without proper business management, your research is worthless. I'm handing you millions of dollars you'd never see otherwise. It's my work. My patent application. My name on every document. Patents can be challenged, Ilara. Technology can be reverse engineered. But business relationships? Corporate partnerships? Those are what turn discoveries into fortunes. Mom reached across the table and placed her hand over mine. Her touch felt like ice. Your father knows what's best, sweetie. This is how successful families operate. Everyone contributes their strengths. I stared at her. 20 years of accounting experience, and she was sitting here pretending she didn't understand intellectual property law. Daniel couldn't contain his excitement anymore. So I'd be running the whole operation? You'd be CEO, Dad confirmed. Ilara handles the technical side. You manage everything else. Sales, marketing, partnerships, expansion. Everything else. I repeated the words like they tasted bitter. You mean my life's work becomes Daniel's company? Our family's company, Dad corrected. Built on Morgan values. Morgan work ethic. Morgan business sense. I felt something crack inside my chest. What about my values? My work ethic? I'm the one who spent 6 years getting a PhD. I'm the one who worked 18-hour days in a freezing basement. I'm the one who solved the problem every physicist in the world has been chasing. Dad's face hardened. And who paid for that education? Who kept a roof over your head while you played with expensive toys? Who gave you the privilege of pursuing your little hobby instead of contributing to this family's success? Little hobby? Everything you are, everything you've accomplished, exists because of what I built. This family. This house. The connections that got you into MIT. The financial security that let you waste years on theoretical nonsense. His voice was rising now, revealing the anger underneath his businessman mask. You owe us, Ilara. You owe me. And 30% of billions is more money than you could spend in 10 lifetimes. Most people would call that generous. Daniel nodded along like Dad was delivering wisdom from the mountaintop. Think about it practically, Elle. You're brilliant with the science stuff, but business? Marketing? Scaling production? You'd crash and burn in 6 months. Mom squeezed my hand tighter. We're family, dear. Family takes care of family. Your father is just protecting you from making mistakes. I looked around the table at these 3 people who shared my DNA but felt like complete strangers. They weren't protecting me. They were stealing from me. And they genuinely believed I should thank them for it. That's when my phone buzzed. A notification sound that cut through the tension like a knife. I glanced down at the screen, and my heart stopped. An email from MIT's Technology Transfer Office. Subject line: Patent approved Google licensing proposal, $1 billion opening bid. Time froze. The notification glowed on my phone screen like a neon sign in the darkness. Everyone at the table could see it. Dad's confident expression faltered. Daniel's smirk vanished. Mom's hand went limp in mine. Patent approved, I read aloud, my voice steady for the first time all evening. Google licensing proposal. Opening bid, $1 billion. The silence that followed was deafening. Dad's fork clattered against his plate. That's impossible. Is it? I turned my phone toward him so he could read the email himself. MIT's Technology Transfer Office. Official letterhead. Verified sender. Daniel grabbed the phone from my hands, his eyes scanning the screen frantically. This has to be fake. A joke. Some kind of scam email. I gently took my phone back. The same office that Professor Hayes works with. The same people who've been evaluating my research for months while you 3 were dismissing it as a hobby. Dad's face had gone pale. You don't have the resources. The connections. The business infrastructure too? To what? I interrupted. To file my own patents? To document my own research? To own my own intellectual property? I stood up slowly, the legal documents from his folder scattered across the table like fallen leaves. See, Dad, while you were busy planning to steal my life's work, I was actually living it. While you were arranging partnerships for technology you didn't understand, I was proving that technology worked. My voice grew stronger with each word. While you 3 were sitting here tonight, pretending to be surprised by my breakthrough, Google's legal team was already drafting licensing agreements. For technology one invented. In a lab I built. With equipment I bought. Using knowledge I earned. Daniel shook his head desperately. You can't handle a $1 billion deal. You don't know anything about negotiations, market positioning, corporate strategy. You're right, I said. I don't know much about corporate strategy. But I know everything about quantum physics. And apparently, that's what Google wants to buy. I picked up Dad's legal documents and held them over the candle centerpiece Mom had lit for dinner. These papers? Your generous offer of 30% of my own discovery? Your plan to make Daniel CEO of my company? The documents caught fire, flames consuming the typed words that had tried to steal my future. That's what I think of your business expertise. Mom finally found her voice. Ilara, you're being emotional. Your father is just trying to help. Help? I laughed, and it came out sharp and bitter. He knew about my breakthrough before I told you. He'd already planned how to take it from me. He brought contracts to Sunday dinner like he was carving up a turkey. I looked directly at Dad, whose face had shifted from pale to red. You want to know what you taught me tonight? You taught me that blood doesn't make family. Respect does. Trust does. Believing in each other does. Daniel made one last desperate attempt. Come on, Elle. We're talking about $1 billion. You can't possibly manage that alone. You need us. I smiled for the first time all evening. really smiled. Actually, Daniel, I don't need any of you. That's the beautiful thing about being underestimated for 28 years. You learn to succeed without anyone's help. I walked toward the door, my footsteps echoing in the suddenly quiet dining room. Ilara. Dad's voice cracked like a whip. You walk out that door, you're on your own. No family. No support. No second chances. I turned back to face him one last time. Dad, I've been on my own since I was 12 years old and you missed my science fair victory for a business meeting. Tonight, you just made it official. The front door closed behind me with a soft click. I sat in my car for 5 minutes, hands shaking, heart pounding. Then I called Professor Hayes. Julian? It's Ilara. We need to talk about Google's offer. Already? That was fast. Yeah, well, it turns out family dinners are great motivation for making life-changing decisions. I started the engine and drove away from the house where I'd spent my childhood learning I wasn't worth believing in. Tomorrow, I'd start building something they could never take away from me. Tonight, I was finally free. The next morning, I woke up in my basement lab. I hadn't planned to sleep there. But after driving around the city for 2 hours, my apartment felt too quiet, too empty. The lab felt like the only place that made sense. My phone had 17 missed calls. 12 from Daniel. 3 from Mom. 2 from Dad. I deleted them all without listening. At 9 a.m., Professor Hayes knocked on my door. He looked older than I remembered, worry lines carved deep around his eyes. Ilara, we need to discuss what happened last night. I poured 2 cups of coffee from the pot I'd started at sunrise. You mean when my father tried to steal my life's work? Or when he mentioned having lunch with you last Tuesday? Julian's shoulders sagged. Your father contacted me 3 weeks ago. Said he wanted to understand your research better. Support your career. And you believed him? I thought he was finally coming around. Finally seeing your potential. He shook his head. I never imagined he'd use that information to ambush you. I studied his face. Julian Hayes had been my champion for 6 years. The only person in academia who'd taken my theories seriously when everyone else called them impossible. What exactly did you tell him? Technical details about your breakthrough. The commercial applications. I mentioned Google's interest. He looked sick. Ilara, I'm so sorry. I thought I was helping. You were helping. Just not me. My phone rang. Daniel again. I answered on the 4th ring. What do you want? Thank God. We need to talk. As a family. We're not family anymore, Daniel. You made that clear last night. Come on, don't be dramatic. Dad was just looking out for your interests. I almost laughed. By stealing 70% of my discovery? By making sure you don't get eaten alive by corporate lawyers and venture capitalists who'll promise you everything and deliver nothing. Like you did? Silence on the other end. Daniel, let me explain something. Google's legal team has been negotiating technology licenses since before you learned to read. MIT's Technology Transfer Office has handled billions in intellectual property deals. You really think I need protection from people who've been doing this professionally for decades? You need family, Elle. You need people who actually care about you. People who care about me don't try to steal from me. I hung up. Julian set down his coffee cup. What's your next move? Honestly? I have no idea. Yesterday I was a basement scientist with a breakthrough. Today I'm apparently worth $1 billion and my entire family hates me. They don't hate you. They're scared. Of what? Of losing control. Of realizing they were wrong about you for 28 years. He leaned forward. Your father built his whole identity on being the successful one. The provider. The decision maker. And suddenly his daughter has achieved something he never could. So I should feel sorry for him? No. But you should understand what you're dealing with. Wounded pride makes people dangerous. As if summoned by his words, my phone buzzed with a text from Dad. We need to discuss this situation before you make any irreversible mistakes. Meet me at my office tomorrow at 10 a.m. Asterisk. I showed Julian the message. Are you going? Part of me wants to. Part of me wants to see if he'll actually apologize. And the other part? The other part knows he'll just try a different angle to get what he wants. Julian nodded. Trust that part. 3 hours later, Daniel showed up at my door. No phone call. No warning. Just knocked like he had every right to be there. I opened the door but didn't invite him in. Please. Just 5 minutes. Talk. Dad's construction business is in trouble. Has been for months. The medical complex project fell through. 3 other contracts got cancelled. He's leveraged up to his eyeballs. My stomach dropped. How much trouble? Bankruptcy trouble. Unless something changes fast. And there it was. The real reason for last night's ambush. They didn't just want my discovery. They needed it. I didn't meet Dad at his office. Instead, I called Google's legal team at 8 a.m. and told them we needed to accelerate negotiations. By 10 a.m., while Dad was probably sitting in his conference room waiting for me, I was signing preliminary agreements with the biggest tech company in the world. By noon, my phone was ringing off the hook. Ilara. Dad's voice cracked through the speaker. What have you done? Business, Dad. Something you taught me was important. You can't negotiate a $1 billion deal without legal representation. Without family support. You're going to get destroyed. I have legal representation. MIT's technology transfer office connected me with intellectual property lawyers who've handled deals 10 times larger than this. Those lawyers work for MIT, not for you. Actually, they work for whoever pays them. And since I'm about to have significantly more money than you, I think my interests are well protected. I could hear him breathing hard on the other end. This is insane, Ilara. You're 28 years old. You've never run a company. Never managed employees. Never dealt with investors or board members or quarterly earnings reports. You're right. I haven't. But Google has. And they seem pretty confident they can handle those details while I focus on the actual technology. They'll steal everything from you. The irony was breathtaking. Like you tried to do? That was different. We're family. No, Dad. Family supports each other. Family celebrates each other's successes. Family doesn't show up to dinner with pre-written contracts to steal each other's life work. I hung up and immediately called my new lawyer. Mr. Stevens? It's Dr. Morgan. I think we need to discuss protecting my intellectual property from potential challenges. By Thursday, the war had escalated. Dad hired Morrison, Klein and Associates. The same law firm that had helped him navigate 3 decades of construction contracts and business deals. Their first move was a cease and desist letter claiming I'd used family resources to develop my technology. The basement lab was in an apartment they'd helped me secure. Some of my equipment had been purchased with money from birthday and Christmas gifts over the years. Therefore, they argued, my discovery was partially owned by the Morgan family estate. It was desperate. Legally questionable. But expensive to fight. My lawyer's response was swift and brutal. Dr. Morgan's research was conducted independently using her own equipment, her own education, and her own intellectual capacity. Any gifts from family members were personal in nature and came with no expectation of intellectual property ownership. The letter concluded with a threat to countersue for harassment and attempted theft of intellectual property. Friday brought a new attack vector. Daniel called every major tech publication in Silicon Valley, claiming Google was negotiating with a scientist whose family had legitimate ownership claims to her research. It's a messy family dispute, he told TechCrunch. My sister is brilliant, but she doesn't understand the business implications of what she's doing. This could turn into a legal nightmare for any company that tries to license her technology. The story ran online within hours. By evening, Google's lead negotiator called me. Dr. Morgan, we need to address these family ownership claims before we can proceed. My stomach clenched. The claims have no legal merit. Perhaps. But they create uncertainty. Uncertainty makes investors nervous. What does that mean for our deal? It means we need ironclad proof that you have sole ownership of this technology. Documentation. Legal opinions. Sworn affidavits. And if I can provide all of that? Then we move forward as planned. But Dr. Morgan, family disputes can drag on for years. Even frivolous lawsuits cost millions to defend. You need to consider whether this fight is worth it. After I hung up, I sat in my lab staring at the quantum entanglement device that had started everything. Worth it? This technology could revolutionize medicine. Secure global communications. Advance human knowledge in ways we couldn't even imagine yet. And my family was trying to destroy it for money they hadn't earned. Yeah. It was worth fighting for. The next 3 weeks felt like living inside a blender. Every morning brought new legal documents. Depositions. Sworn statements. Patent challenges. My lawyers were billing more per day than I used to spend in 6 months. But the worst part wasn't the legal bills or the stress or even the constant threat of losing everything I'd worked for. The worst part was the loneliness. 28 years of family disappointment hadn't prepared me for complete family warfare. Mom called once, crying. "Sweetie, can't we just work this out? Can't we find some compromise?" "What compromise, Mom?" "They want 70% of my discovery. I want to keep what I created. Maybe 60-40? Or 50-50. Mom, this is my life's work. It's like asking Michelangelo to split ownership of the Sistine Chapel with someone who handed him a paintbrush." She didn't call back. Daniel's approach was more direct. He showed up at my apartment building and waited in the parking lot for 4 hours until I came home. "Elle, you're destroying our family." "I'm destroying it?" "Dad might lose everything. The house. The business. Mom's retirement savings." I felt a stab of guilt, then anger at myself for feeling guilty. That's not my fault. Isn't it? You could end this tomorrow. Sign a partnership agreement. Keep 50%. Save everyone. Why is it my responsibility to save Dad's failing business with my successful research? Because that's what families do. No, Daniel. That's what victims do. They give up what they've earned to fix other people's mistakes. He got out of his car and walked closer. For a moment, he looked like the big brother who used to help me with math homework. "I miss you, Elle." "We all do." That almost broke me. Almost. "Then you shouldn't have tried to steal from me." "We weren't stealing. We were trying to help." "By giving yourself 70% of my work? By making sure you didn't get screwed by people who are smarter than you at business." And there it was. The fundamental truth my family would never understand. They still thought I was too stupid to succeed without them. 3 days later, the media attention intensified. A tech blogger named Marcus Webb published a deep-dive article titled "Family Feud Threatens Billion-Dollar Quantum Breakthrough." He'd interviewed Daniel extensively. Painted me as an ungrateful daughter who'd abandoned her loving family for corporate greed. "The Morgans are a tight-knit family who built their success through hard work and mutual support," Daniel was quoted saying. "Ilara's decision to cut us out completely goes against everything our parents taught us about loyalty and gratitude." The article included photos of our family from Daniel's social media. Sunday dinners. Holiday celebrations. All of us smiling like we actually enjoyed each other's company. The comments section was brutal. Typical millennial. No respect for family. Her parents probably paid for her education and she's repaying them by stealing their investment. Google should stay away from this mess. Too much family drama. That evening, Professor Hayes called with bad news. "Ilara, MIT is getting pressure to distance itself from this situation. The family dispute is creating negative publicity for the technology transfer program." My heart sank. What does that mean? It means they want you to resolve this quickly. One way or another. By giving in to my family's demands? By making the controversy disappear. I hung up and realized how completely alone I was. My family had turned against me. The media was painting me as a villain. Even my university was losing patience. All because I wanted to keep what I'd created. That night, I stood in my lab looking at the device that had changed my life and wondered if I'd made a terrible mistake. Maybe Daniel was right. Maybe I should have taken 50% and kept the peace. Maybe some dreams aren't worth fighting for. Then I remembered something Professor Hayes had told me years ago. The greatest revolutions start in basements. Not in boardrooms. Not in family meetings. In basements, with stubborn people who refuse to give up. I wasn't giving up. Not yet. 6 months later, I stood in the lobby of a gleaming Cambridge office building, watching workers install a sign that read Morgan Quantum Technologies. My company. My name. My rules. The Google deal had closed despite my family's legal challenges. $1.7 billion over 7 years, with performance bonuses that could push it past $3 billion. But more importantly, I'd retained full ownership of the core technology. The lobby buzzed with controlled chaos. Moving trucks. IT technicians running cables. Furniture deliveries. The sound of a company being born. Dr. Morgan? A young woman approached with a tablet and a confident smile. I'm Sarah Chin, your new head of operations. We need your approval on the lab specifications for floors 6 through 8. 6 through 8. My basement operation now occupied 3 full floors of a research facility that would make MIT jealous. What do we need approval for? Quantum isolation chambers. Clean room facilities. The particle accelerator installation requires structural modifications that exceed our initial budget by 40%. Approved. What else? Hiring. We have interviews scheduled for 12 senior researchers, 6 project managers, and a chief technology officer position. I thought I was the CTO. Sarah smiled. You're the CEO and founder. The CTO handles day-to-day technical operations so you can focus on strategy, partnerships, and the bigger picture. CEO. 6 months ago, I was working alone in a basement. Now I had 63 employees and a waiting list of PhD candidates who wanted to work on quantum entanglement applications. Dr. Morgan? Another voice. A man in an expensive suit carrying a leather portfolio. I'm James Mitchell from Vertex Capital. We have a 2 p.m. about series of funding. I checked my phone. 1:45 p.m. Funding for what? We just closed the Google deal. Expansion capital. Your quantum encryption technology has applications in defense, healthcare, autonomous vehicles, space communications. Each vertical could be worth billions independently. Billions. Plural. A year ago, my family had offered me 30% of my own discovery like they were doing me a favor. Now venture capitalists were lining up to hand me blank checks. The conference room on the 20th floor had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Charles River. I could see MIT's campus in the distance, the place where this journey had started. Mitchell spread charts and projections across the polished table. Conservative estimates put your total addressable market at $47 billion by 2030. Aggressive scaling could capture 15 to 20% market share within 5 years. What's the catch? No catch. Just growth capital in exchange for equity. We're proposing a $200 million Series A for 12% of the company. I did the math in my head. That valued my company at nearly $2 billion. I'll need to discuss this with my advisors. Of course. But Dr. Morgan, you should know that 3 other VC firms are preparing competing offers. This market moves fast. After Mitchell left, I sat alone in the conference room, staring out at the city where I'd grown up feeling like a disappointment. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Saw the TechCrunch article about your company. Proud of you. Mom**. The article had run that morning. Quantum physicist builds billion-dollar company after family betrayal. Apparently, the narrative had shifted. I wasn't the ungrateful daughter anymore. I was the brilliant scientist who'd overcome family sabotage to build something revolutionary. I started to text back, then deleted it. Some bridges, once burned, can't be rebuilt with a single text message. Dr. Morgan? Sarah appeared in the doorway. There's someone here to see you. Says he's your brother? My stomach clenched. Send him up. Daniel walked into the conference room wearing a charcoal suit I'd never seen before. He looked thinner, older. Success had been good to me. The last 6 months had not been kind to him. Nice office, he said, not quite meeting my eyes. What do you want, Daniel? A job. I blinked. Excuse me? I want to work here. For you. You spent 3 months trying to destroy my company. I was protecting family interests. By lying to reporters and challenging my patents? He finally looked directly at me. Dad's business went under last month. Officially filed for bankruptcy. Mom and I are both unemployed. Part of me felt satisfaction. Part of me felt guilty for feeling satisfied. That's not my problem. I know. But I was wrong. We were all wrong. His voice cracked slightly. You built something incredible here. Something I never could have imagined. And now you want to benefit from it? I want to earn my place in it. I studied his face, looking for the manipulation, the angle, the hidden agenda. All I saw was exhaustion and genuine regret. If I hired you, you'd start at the bottom. Entry level. No special treatment. I understand. You'd report to people half your age with twice your qualifications. I understand. And if you ever try to undermine me or claim credit for work you didn't do, I'll have security escort you out permanently. He nodded. I understand. Against my better judgment, I heard myself saying, we have an opening in project coordination. $35,000 a year. No benefits for the first 6 months. I'll take it. Maybe forgiveness was a luxury successful people could afford. Or maybe I was just tired of hating my brother. Either way, Daniel started work the following Monday. And for the first time in months, I didn't feel completely alone. 3 months into Daniel's employment, I barely recognized him. Gone was the cocky swagger that had defined my brother for 32 years. In its place was something I'd never seen before, humility. He arrived at the office before me most mornings. Stayed later than anyone else. Asked intelligent questions during team meetings. Actually listened to the answers. Your brother's been impressive, Sarah told me during our weekly operations review. He's coordinating the healthcare applications project, and the team really respects him. Any complaints? The opposite. He's the hardest worker in his department. Never mentions his last name or tries to leverage his relationship with you. I felt a strange mix of pride and suspicion. This couldn't be the same person who'd tried to steal my company 6 months ago. That evening, I found Daniel still at his desk at 8 p.m., reviewing technical specifications for our medical imaging prototype. Go home, I said. You don't have to prove anything by working yourself to death. He looked up, surprised. I'm not trying to prove anything. This stuff is actually fascinating. Since when do you find quantum physics fascinating? Since I started understanding what you're actually building here. He gestured at the documents spread across his desk. This imaging technology could detect brain tumors at the cellular level. Before they're visible on any current scanner. I know. I invented it. Right. But do you realize how many lives this could save? My project coordination involves connecting with hospitals, medical researchers, FDA approval processes. I'm seeing the real-world impact of your work. Something in his voice was different. Not the fake enthusiasm he used to use when trying to manipulate me. Genuine excitement. Dad never understood this part, he continued. The part where your work actually helps people. He just saw dollar signs. What about you? What do you see? Daniel was quiet for a long moment. I see my little sister changing the world while I spent 32 years chasing Dad's approval for building things that don't matter. The vulnerability in his voice caught me off guard. Construction matters, Daniel. People need buildings. People need buildings. But they don't need another Morgan construction company run by someone who inherited the job instead of earning it. He stood up and started organizing his paperwork. You know what's funny? Working here, starting at the bottom, learning from people who are smarter than me, it's the first time I've felt actually good at something. You're good at this job? I'm learning to be. And not because my last name got me shortcuts, but because I'm willing to work for it. 2 weeks later, the medical imaging prototype passed its first FDA safety review. The announcement made national news. Quantum technology could revolutionize cancer detection. That night, my phone rang. Dad. I'd been avoiding his calls for 8 months, but something made me answer. Ilara? His voice sounded smaller than I remembered. What do you want, Dad? I saw the news. About your medical device. And I wanted to say, I'm proud of you. The words I'd wanted to hear my entire life, and they felt hollow. Too late. Too calculated. Are you proud of me, or proud of the money my device will generate? I'm proud of what you've accomplished. What you've built. Even though I built it without your help? Without your 70-30 partnership deal? Silence on the other end. Dad, I have a question for you. Okay. If you'd succeeded in taking control of my technology last year, would you be developing medical applications? Or would you be focusing exclusively on the highest profit uses? More silence. That's what I thought. Ilara, I made mistakes. I was scared of losing relevance in my own family. You didn't lose relevance, Dad. You lost trust. Can I earn it back? I looked out my office window at the city lights, thinking about Daniel working late every night to prove himself. About Mom texting me proud messages she was too scared to send. I don't know. Trust isn't something you can negotiate or acquire through a partnership agreement. What would it take? It would take you understanding that I don't owe you anything for being your daughter. That my success doesn't belong to you just because you paid for my childhood. I understand that now. Do you? Or do you just understand that your original plan failed? He didn't answer. When you can tell the difference, call me back. I hung up and realized something had shifted inside me. I wasn't angry anymore. I was just disappointed. And somehow, that felt worse. The photo showed me in my Cambridge lab, surrounded by the quantum devices that had started everything. Professional. Confident. Successful. Inside was a 12-page feature detailing my journey from basement scientist to biotech revolutionary. But the most damaging part wasn't about me. It was about them. Marcus Webb, the same tech journalist who'd written the hit piece on me 8 months earlier, had done his homework this time. He'd interviewed former Morgan construction employees. Dug into bankruptcy filings. Found the paper trail of Dad's financial problems. The article revealed that Richard Morgan had known about his daughter's breakthrough and immediately began planning to acquire it, not to support her success but to save his failing business empire. Sources close to the family confirmed that Morgan had researched his daughter's work extensively before confronting her at a family dinner with pre-written partnership agreements that would have given him majority control of her discovery. Webb had even obtained quotes from legal documents showing Dad's lawyers had argued that Ilara's childhood support entitled the family to ownership of her adult achievements. The article made him look exactly like what he was, a desperate businessman who'd tried to steal his daughter's success to cover his own failures. My phone rang within an hour of the magazine hitting stores. You have to do something about this article. Daniel sounded panicked. Do something like what? Issue a statement. Correct the record. Dad looks like a monster. I was sitting in my office, the Forbes cover propped against my computer monitor. Which part of the article is incorrect, Daniel? The part where they make it sound like Dad planned this whole thing as some kind of calculated theft. Didn't he? He was trying to protect you from making business mistakes. By taking 70% ownership of my work? Daniel went quiet. The article is accurate, Daniel. Dad did research my breakthrough in advance. He did bring pre-written contracts to dinner. He did try to convince me I owed him my discovery because he'd paid for my childhood. But the way they're presenting it is truthful. And if Dad doesn't like how his actions look when they're described accurately, maybe he should have chosen different actions. That afternoon brought a call from Mom. Sweetie, your father is devastated by this article. People are calling him horrible names online. His golf club is asking him to resign from the board. Mom, I didn't write the article. I just answered the reporter's questions honestly. But couldn't you have softened things? Protected the family reputation? Whose reputation was Dad protecting when he tried to steal my life's work? He wasn't trying to steal anything. He was trying to help. By giving himself majority control of something I created? By making sure you didn't get taken advantage of. I realized Mom would never understand. In her mind, Dad's attempted theft was justified because it came from a place of protection rather than greed. The distinction didn't matter to me anymore. 3 days later, Dad appeared at my office building. Security called before letting him up. Dr. Morgan, your father is here. Should we send him away? I almost said yes. Almost ended this entire chapter of my life with a single word. Instead, I said, send him up. He walked into my office looking like he'd aged 5 years in 8 months. His expensive suits had been replaced by off-the-rack clothes. His confidence had been replaced by something that looked almost like shame. The article wasn't fair, Ilara. Which part was inaccurate? The way it made me sound. Like I was some kind of predator trying to steal from my own daughter. Dad, you literally brought contracts to Sunday dinner that would have given you control of my discovery. How else should that sound? He sat down heavily in the chair across from my desk. I was scared, Ilara. Scared of losing everything I'd built. Scared of being irrelevant in my own family. So you decided to make me irrelevant in mine? For the first time in my life, I saw my father cry. Not the manipulative tears of someone trying to get their way. Real tears. The kind that come from finally understanding the magnitude of your mistakes. I'm sorry, he whispered. And I believed him. But sorry doesn't undo betrayal. It just makes it sadder. 2 months after the Forbes article, something unexpected happened. Mom called me directly instead of texting. Ilara? It's your mother. I wondered if we could have coffee. Just the two of us. We met at a small cafe near Harvard Square. Mom arrived 10 minutes early, sitting at a corner table wearing clothes I'd never seen before. Professional attire. Not the designer outfits she used to wear to Dad's business functions. You look different, I said, sitting down across from her. I went back to work. Accounting firm downtown. It's been 23 years since I worked outside the home. I tried to hide my surprise. How's that going? Terrifying and wonderful. She smiled, and for the first time in years, it looked genuine. I'd forgotten how good it feels to solve problems with my own mind instead of just supporting someone else's decisions. What made you decide to go back? Mom stirred her coffee slowly, choosing her words carefully. Watching you build your company. Seeing what you accomplished when you stopped waiting for approval and just did the work. She looked up at me. I spent 23 years being the perfect CEO's wife. Hosting parties. Smiling pretty. Making sure your father never had to worry about anything domestic. You were good at that. I was good at disappearing. There's a difference. She reached into her purse and pulled out business cards. Margaret Chin Accounting Services. I took back my maiden name. The cards were simple, elegant. Professional. Mom, this is incredible. Your father wasn't happy about it. Said it made him look bad, like he couldn't provide for his family. What did you tell him? I told him I wasn't his family anymore. Not the way I used to be. She met my eyes. I told him I wanted to be the kind of person my daughter could respect. Something cracked open in my chest. A door I'd kept locked for months. "I'm sorry I didn't protect you," she continued. At that dinner. During the legal fights. "I knew what your father was doing was wrong, but I was too scared to say anything." Scared of what? Scared of losing the only identity I'd had for 2 decades. Scared of starting over at 51. Scared of admitting I'd been complicit in dismissing my own daughter's brilliance because it was easier than standing up to my husband. The honesty was jarring. I'd never heard Mom speak so directly about anything. "I can't undo what I didn't do," she said. "But I can try to become someone worthy of your forgiveness." We sat in comfortable silence for several minutes. "How's your business doing?" I asked. "Growing faster than I expected." Apparently, there are a lot of small businesses that need honest accounting services from someone who won't talk down to them. She smiled wryly. 23 years of managing your father's social calendar taught me patience with difficult personalities." I laughed despite myself. That's one way to look at it. "Elara, I know I don't have the right to ask this, but would you be willing to have dinner sometime? Just us. No agenda. No family drama. Just a mother getting to know the incredible woman her daughter became." I thought about all the Sunday dinners where she'd sat silent while Dad and Daniel dismissed my dreams. Then I thought about the courage it must have taken for her to start over at 51. I'd like that. For the first time in over a year, hugging my mother felt real. It felt like hope. "By the way," she said as we walked to our cars, "Daniel speaks about you differently now." Different how? Like someone he respects instead of someone he needs to protect. Change, it turned out, was contagious. Even in families that seemed permanently broken. 1 year later, Dad showed up at my office unannounced. But this time, he didn't demand to see me. He waited in the lobby like any other visitor. Security called up. "Dr. Morgan, your father would like to speak with you if you have time." I almost said I was busy. Almost let him sit there for an hour just to make a point. Instead, I said, "Send him up." He walked into my office carrying a small wrapped package and wearing the kind of humble expression I'd never seen on his face before. "I brought you something," he said, setting the package on my desk. Inside was a framed photograph. Me at age 12, holding my first-place science fair trophy, grinning at the camera with gap-toothed pride. "Where did you get this?" "I found it in a box in the attic." "Apparently, your mother saved all your awards and certificates over the years." His voice was quiet. I never looked at them before. He sat down across from my desk, looking smaller than I remembered. "I've been going to therapy, Elara. For the past 8 months." I tried not to show my surprise. "What I did to you, the way I treated your achievements." The therapist helped me understand that it wasn't really about business or protecting you from mistakes. What was it about? Fear. Fear that my children might be more successful than me. Fear that if you didn't need my guidance, you might not need me at all. He looked at the photograph on my desk. "I missed your science fair because I was scared of seeing how brilliant you were. I dismissed your PhD because I was scared of admitting I didn't understand your work. I tried to take control of your discovery because I was scared of being irrelevant in your success. Dad. I know sorry doesn't fix what I broke. But I need you to know that I finally understand what I did wrong." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a letter. "This is a formal apology. Written statement acknowledging that your technology belongs entirely to you. That I had no right to claim ownership of your work. That my attempts to interfere with your business were wrong." I unfolded the letter. 2 pages of detailed acknowledgement of his mistakes, taking full responsibility for the family conflict. Why now? Because Mom showed me the medical studies. The cancer detection device you developed has identified tumors in over 3,000 patients who would have died without early detection. His voice broke slightly. 3,000 people, Elara. 3,000 families who still have their loved ones because of something you created in your basement lab. He wiped his eyes. I spent my whole life building structures out of concrete and steel. You're building futures out of pure intelligence. Dad. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't expect a relationship. I just wanted you to know that I finally see who you really are. He stood to leave. The construction company that bears our family name will be gone in 6 months. But the technology company you built, that's going to outlive all of us. He paused at the door. I'm proud to be your father, even if I don't deserve to be. After he left, I sat staring at that 12-year-old photo for 20 minutes. The little girl holding that trophy had dreamed of this moment. Recognition. Respect. Acknowledgement from the person whose approval she'd craved most. Now that I had it, I realized something important. I didn't need it anymore. But it still felt good to finally receive it. 5 years later, I stood on the stage at the Nobel Prize ceremony in Stockholm, holding the medal for physics. The quantum entanglement stabilization technology that started in my basement had revolutionized medicine, communications, and computing. It had saved lives, secured data, and opened doors to discoveries we'd never imagined possible. In the audience sat my team from Morgan Quantum Technologies. Sarah Chen, now my COO. The researchers who'd helped me scale my basement breakthrough into world-changing applications. Daniel was there too, wearing his new title of VP of Medical Applications with quiet pride. He'd earned it through 5 years of dedicated work, not family connections. Mom sat in the front row, running her own accounting firm and volunteering with organizations that supported women returning to the workforce. And in the back, almost hidden, was Dad. He'd lost everything financial in the aftermath of our family breakdown. The house. The business. The reputation he'd spent decades building. But he'd gained something more valuable, the respect of his daughter. Not because he demanded it or tried to steal it, but because he'd finally learned how to earn it. After the ceremony, reporters surrounded me with questions. Dr. Morgan, your family publicly opposed your research in the early stages. How does it feel to prove them wrong? I thought about that question for a long moment. They weren't wrong to be concerned about my ability to handle a major business venture. I was 28 with no management experience. But they tried to take control of your discovery. They tried to protect me from making mistakes. The methods were wrong, but the concern came from a place of love. Do you consider this revenge for their lack of support? I looked out at the audience, at Daniel beaming with genuine pride, at Mom wiping away tears, at Dad sitting quietly in the back with an expression of pure wonder. Revenge suggests I did this to hurt them. I didn't. I did this because I believed in the science. But surely their attempts to control your work motivated you? Their dismissal taught me to trust my own judgment. Their betrayal taught me the value of self-reliance. Their eventual support taught me that people can change. I paused, thinking about the 12-year-old girl who'd won a science fair and scanned the crowd for her father's face. The most fatal revenge isn't proving people wrong. It's becoming so successful at what you love that their opinion stops mattering. What's next for Morgan Quantum Technologies? We're launching the Morgan Foundation next month. Full scholarships for young scientists whose families don't understand or support their research. Any message for young people facing similar family opposition? I looked directly into the camera. Your worth isn't determined by whether the people closest to you recognize it. Sometimes the people who love you most will be the ones who doubt you most, not because you can't succeed, but because your success challenges their understanding of the world. And if those people never come around? Then you succeed anyway. Not for revenge, but for the pure joy of proving to yourself that your dreams were worth believing in. That night, at the Nobel banquet, Dad approached me carefully. Ilara, I don't know if this is appropriate, but I'm proud of you. I know, Dad. And I'm sorry it took me so long to say it properly. I know that too. Can I ask you something? Sure. Do you still love me? Despite everything I did? I looked at this man who'd shaped my life through dismissal and betrayal, who'd taught me resilience by forcing me to develop it, who'd shown me the value of self-belief by withholding his own. Dad, I love you because of everything you did. The good and the bad. It all made me who I am. Sometimes the most fatal revenge is simply forgiving the people who never believed you deserved to win. And then winning anyway. Want to share your own story of proving doubters wrong? Drop it in the comments below. And if this story reminded you that success is the sweetest response to dismissal, hit that subscribe button, because sometimes the most powerful signature isn't on a contract, it's the one you put on your own self-worth.